Hello and welcome back. This is the 16th video in our Flow Certified Professional Online Training Series. We're going to continue with Cascading Vision, VSPT, and the One Thing, and we're going to continue on that topic in this video. So, there are a few things to remember when we're cascading vision. There's three things that impact it. Language, and we're going to talk about some of the differences between the languages. We're going to talk about dilution and what's happening to your message as it's cascading down through the organization. And then we're going to chat about prioritizing using the one thing. We mentioned briefly a little bit about that last time, and we'll reinforce that here in this video. So, as I mentioned in the leadership takeaways on the previous slide, there are three things that we need to keep in mind: language, dilution, and distillation. And the distillation is how you distill down to the one thing. So the first issue is language. And a lot of times we think, especially from the business side, we think that we're communicating with the guys on the technology side who create these tools. And we think we're really clear. Not even close. And so that's why we have the explosion between these two sides, because the business side is going to be speaking business language, and the technical side is going to be speaking technology. And those two tend to crash. And so that's why when you look at define, distill, deliver, and drive, that distillation is down here at the bottom of the triangle, and that's how you make sure that the business and technology actually understand each other. There's been many times that I've thought, this is almost a role. It's almost like a translator role or an interpreter role, either way you want to look at that. And what's really important in this, as well as up here on the relationship, that the relationships are part of drive in the 4D model. And that's why it's so important to have your Scrum Masters, Agile coaches, your managers, line managers, directors, program managers, portfolio managers, executives who are managing all these intricate interpersonal relationships in the organization. That's actually a value add. And so you just need to keep that in mind as you're looking at the obstacles for cascading vision and linking back. That one goes both ways. Now, I just had a really good chat with Alex about this recently, and I mentioned to him that this line going across here in the middle, it can move. It really depends on your organization. It's not a clear demarcation. So you've got the one language between business and technology, and now you have two other languages that people are speaking, and that's the language of leadership versus the language of management. And so typically, the language of leadership is at the executive, senior management, portfolio levels, sometimes getting down into program management as well. And so that's sort of why I drew the line in the middle. But that's why it gets fuzzy. It's not a clear, this is where management ends and leadership begins. They're parallel to each other, and it's a both and, not an either or. So it's really hard to draw a picture like this. But the origin of this picture is I was sitting in a meeting where there were probably 30, 40 people in the room. Half were management consultants, and the other half were Agile purists. And that was an interesting discussion. And as they were talking, I went up to the flip chart and I drew this picture for the first time or not exactly this picture, but I circled it and I said, look, up here you're speaking the language of leadership, and that's management consulting. And down here with the individuals and teams, you're really speaking the language of management. And if you're going to lead and inspire, and at the same time make sure the hard work gets done, ooh, and that's a hard one to balance. It's almost theory Y, theory X. And it's a both and, it's not an either or. And I think that's what a lot of people miss is you have to be willing to do the hard work in the pursuit of excellence as an individual, as a team, as a project, program, portfolio, all the way to the top. If no one is pursuing excellence, then you're going to end up with what you get. And so the languages, both back on the previous slide between business side and technology side, and now between the language of leadership and the language of management, it's not that they don't understand each other, it's that they don't communicate. And that's two different things. Now, agile methods and tools only partially address the two languages. And I've been bringing this up in the agile community now probably for the last 10, 15 years, as well as the project management community. What we're up against is Scrum, Kanban, XP, Scrumban, whatever you're using, Agile, at the team level. Those are team level tools. It's not necessarily mindset. They want to have the mindset of being agile, but they teach the tool set. Let's be honest about it. Okay, and it gets worse when you go up to the scaled agile level. At the scaled agile level, it's like tools on steroids. So it doesn't matter if it's safe for Scrum at scale or less or Nexus or whatever scaled methodology you're doing. They themselves have admitted, yeah, these are more the tool sets and frameworks rather than the mindset and the soft skills that you actually need to succeed. And the soft skills that you need to succeed occur up here in the language of leadership. And again, that's why flow is a leadership framework that sits above all of this and helps both the leaders and the management be able to communicate with the teams and the individuals. And so that's why I'm saying, and you can argue with me all you want, but since this is a video, I won't hear what you're saying. It only partially addresses the two languages. And safe, at best, any of these scaled agile things are program level at best. Okay? A lot of them claim to get up to the next level into the portfolio, but we'll show you examples along the way of where that's just not the case. So it's maybe their aspiration, but the links aren't called out as specifically as they should. And because of that, then it makes it very difficult to have those frameworks and tool work in the program environment if you're set up with a different program management methodology. So again, now we're getting back into language of management and language of leadership. And this is also another dichotomy in a way to look at this. And Agile primarily focuses on team and individual. Management consulting focuses primarily on product and organization. And management consulting and Agile coaching need to learn to become more like each other. Okay? And so the language of management in this area can become a blocker to the language of leadership. And I was half tempted to draw this right-left separation. I almost drew it as where the language of leadership is just primarily in the organization box and the language of management's in the other three in reality. But I think this still works pretty well. And so as an executive, as a leader, and it doesn't matter if you're a leader in any of these four lenses, in order to get the unified vision, you need to be able to get everybody speaking the same language. We've been beating that drum for 25 years because if you're not on the same page, it's going to be really difficult to deliver anything. Here's the picture of what I was just mentioning on the other side. The Agilists, they say, well, we work with product, we work with the organization. But that wasn't their primary domain, especially when you consider so few people have been certified in Scrum or Agile as product owners. And you compare all that you have of those 50,000, even if it's 100,000, you compare that to the 2 million people with MBAs and a lot of those with MBAs in marketing. That's two different sizes in the armies and what's been taught. And so this is one of the first friction points in trying to get Agile scaled, is that everyone working on the right hand two boxes are speaking a different language and they have a different worldview and philosophy on how to get work done. And management consultants have been doing this for decades, if not half a century or more. I think it's even closer to 100 years. Agilists have only been around for 20, and so they have a lot of catch up to do. Okay? So, again, we're looking at the language of leadership versus the language of the team in this. And the Agilists are primarily focused at the team and individual level with a little bit in the product area. They're not going to like what I say, but that's my observation now in the last 15 years of being a certified Scrum Master and a certified Scrum professional or practitioner, whatever it's called for the CSP. Now, dilution is the thing that I think a lot of leaders, executives, and even managers and middle managers miss completely. If you are really good and you are only losing 10% per level, and you start at the executive level, go to portfolio, then program, project, and team to the individual, and you're only losing 10% per layer, if you're really good, that means at just a 10% loss of what you're trying to communicate as the vision, by the time you're to the program level where they're supposed to be making the products for your customers, you're talking they've lost over 25%. That's a 27% loss in clarity. And that's if you're only losing 10% per layer. And by the time if you're using projects or teams or whatever, if you've removed the project layer, then it's going to be 59% at the individual. But if you've got a project layer in there, you're down to 53%. And that's if you're really good. That's if you're really good. You have 47% loss at the individual level. And then everybody goes, well, we don't understand why we have gridlock. Well, go back to Dr. Cotter and learn your lessons and say, oh, we have to communicate vision 10 times more than what we're doing. And it's not just, as Dr. Cotter would say, the vision for the change. It's the vision overall. You have to communicate the vision more, 10 times more than you think, if you're a leader at the top. And if you're not doing it, it's going to be painful. And it doesn't get better. So if it's 20% loss per level, already at the program level, you've lost basically half. And by the time the message gets down to the individual, you're at 26%. That's almost gridlock. And if you are not very good at all, and you're losing 50% per layer because of politics and confusion and chaos and everything else that you have in the organization at a 50% loss per level, you've already lost almost 90% by the time you get to the program level. And by the time you get to the individual, it's 98%. You've basically lost the entire message. It's very much like that one game where one person whispers to the next person a sentence, and you go through 6 or 7 people. By the time you're to the end of the line with maybe 10 or 15 people, what's at the end of the line versus what you started with, not even close. This is what it looks like. And this is why we have gridlock in our organization. So you have to take dilution seriously. And executives, you got to be meeting with your teams and doing retrospectives with them to find out, hey, is this something, are we missing something here? What are they doing? And is my message getting to them? And is their message getting back to me? Or is it getting filtered? I've seen this happen over and over again where it works in reverse going upstream, where the executive in a meeting, we did a retrospective with an executive. And when the team explained to them where they were coming from, what they were doing, what they had achieved, and what some of their blockers and obstacles were, the executive was knocked out of his chair, literally almost. He was knocked out of the chair because it was the first time he heard it in a retrospective 10 months into the program. And so the executive was like, he's looking at his top guys going, why am I hearing about this now? Well, it's because they had filtered it and they had blocked it because they had other agendas that they were running. There wasn't a clear, transparent flow of information going both directions. Okay, the third one is distillation. How do you distill down to the one thing? Because it is a distillation process. And as I shared, if you have 25 top items that you need to do for the year, and you're looking at, can I do 25? You can't do 25. Ain't going to happen. And just like that insurance agency leader looked at that and he said, oh, it wasn't insurance, it was real estate. As that real estate agency, the head of that, as he looked at that, he realized, ooh, 25? They'd be great. Those are all great things. They're all value add. Can't do it. Cut it down to 5. Let it sit for a couple of days, come back and go, of these 5 things, if I did this one thing, would that have the biggest impact on the company? And so I don't think is an organization with 30,000 people or 150,000 people going to be willing to take the time to have 150,000 people distill their one things? And are they going to look at it in a way that they can go, oh, I thought my one thing was this, and my team's one thing is way over here, and now it's way over here. This is another way and reason why they're misaligning, and you're not getting that alignment that you're trying to get. So do the hard work. It's simple. It's not easy. Okay. And I'm going to be hammering on that throughout this video series. So remember that there's the language. You've got the language with the triangle with business and technology, and then the relationships at the top. But the business and the technology are speaking different languages, and even we might need new roles where you have translators and interpreters. For the dilution of the message, even if you're good and you're only losing 10% per level, if you have a multi-level organization, by the time you're 6-7 levels deep, you've lost over half the message. And if you're really bad, which I think probably describes most of the organizations out there, you're probably losing half at every level. And that means that basically by the time you're to the program level, you've lost 3/4, and by the time you're to the individual, it's game over. They don't even know why they're doing what they're doing. And I think if you really polled your people and did a survey of everyone in your company, you would find out that they would go, ask them, well, why are you doing that? And they'd go, I don't know. My boss told me to do it. Okay? And so I think that if you could identify and eliminate that waste, which is a very lean concept, lean and agile, one of the 12 principles is maximize the amount of work not done. And if you can identify that waste and maximize it so that you're not doing that, you're going to save a ton of money. It's like when Microsoft did that survey 15, 20 years ago and looked into all the features that they had in Microsoft Office. And it was amazing. It turned into an 80-20 Pareto where people only used like 5 to 7% of all those features all the time. And then another, 15% of the features so that it totaled up to 20 where they used it some of the time, but the rest of the time it was rarely or never. That was like 80%, and it's like they had features out the yin yang in those Microsoft Office products. People don't use them, and so you can argue. I know that I have an MBA in marketing. Marketing guys were going, "Hey, we needed that to compete to get our place in the marketplace." But the reality is that that was a lot of wasted effort. People don't use the feature. So if people aren't using the feature, why make it? Why spend a minute of effort, money, or resources on creating something no one will ever use? We've got everyone has these stories about companies who spent millions of dollars on an engineering piece of software that the engineers thought were great. And when they rolled it out, nobody, the big zero, nobody in the organization used it. And then everyone's shocked and horrified and said, "Hey, we spent millions on this. Why aren't people using it?" And it's like, well, nobody talked to the customer and inside the organization to find out, hey, was this a real problem that needed to be solved when it wasn't? So, and then finally, distillation. You got to figure out what that one thing is, and you have to listen for the one things coming back up to you as the leader. And there's always a one thing, okay? And so you need to identify as a leader what's the one thing that's going to just be the remarkable result that's going to catapult the organization and my teams to the next level. So, coming into the recap, we've talked about, we just recapped the language dilution and prioritizing the one thing, what I call distillation. And then the application is, and this is so important, you got to gain agreement. And so you got to make sure if it's the business side and the technical side chatting with each other, make sure that the agreement's there. If it's the leaders and the managers chatting, we need to make sure that there's agreement there. And you need to, if you're in the team, you as the team member, you need to be making sure that you've got alignment and agreement between yourself and your team and between yourself and your leadership. And if you can do that, it's going to help you immensely, especially in your stakeholder management, okay? And so we'll get into that in the stakeholder management, some of the things you're going to need to think about and different ways to look at it and the mindset you need to have when doing stakeholder management.